So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the fall edition of the Digital Food Series 2021. To introduce myself, my name is Tiffany Chui. I'm your moderator for today's session. I'm an international agri-food strategy advisor, and I focus on sustainability and transformation and bridging East with West. I also like to introduce the team on the digital food. Bianca, who's having the same background as me. She will also help me with the poll question later. And also Dick Vierman, can wave. Together, we developed the concept of the Digital Food 2021 series to focus on the theme of connecting. So connect data, technology, and strategy, and connecting people, ideas, and regions. This is already the third one in the fall edition. And then in this edition, we focus on the key question is what is needed to create trust among connected players in the system? How do we define value allocation models for providing data, transforming them, and applying information throughout the entirety of the food chain? So a recap of our previous sessions around this topic, we had a discussion with, for example, Westford, which is a agricultural cooperative for pig growers in the Netherlands, one of the biggest. What they are doing is already paying a small amount of, or good amount of money for their co-op members to collect data from the piglet. So in that sense, Westford is acting as a kind of collective data owner for the members. We also had a discussion with AgriFirm, which is another co-op who's developing the dashboard to streamline data collection on the chain. So similar question is, what is the business model for collecting data? We had also a discussion with Krijn Popper from Wageningen University, who pointed out that the government needed to support farmers to solve the interoperability mess by requiring standard sustainability reporting based on digitization with existing data flows and not by leaving it to the market. So today we have quite a full house because we have two very interesting speakers representing leading international third-party standard-setting bodies. First speaker is Mirjam Kamergold. She is the CEO of GS1 Netherlands. GS1 is an independent non-profit organization. It develops international uniform standards for identification, capturing, and sharing of data. And our second speaker is Christian Muller. Christian, very happy to have you back because you are the guest speaker at our launch talk where we already threw out the question of how will the agri-food system go? How will it transform the value systems? So Christian Muller is founder of managing director of Global Gap, based in Germany, with team members all around the world. So Global Gap develops assurance solutions for farmers for consumer supply chain, including certifications, farm assessment, and capacity building. So as digital food, as a nobody's platform, we're very happy and honored that we, in some ways, was facilitated this kind of official dialogue between these two important, influential organizations to discuss how would you work together. So very happy to have you two. And before we start, let's start with, as usual, our tradition to have a first poll question. Bianca. The question is, who will, maybe the same question or it's a different question, who should take the lead in the digitization development in agri-food systems? You can only choose one, so who most likely or should be, should it be international bodies, UN, FAO, or third-party independent certification standard-setting bodies, such as the two big ones we have today, or leading chain players who has a role in the supply chain, such as Westford Mobile, who has the trust and ability to integrate data from farm to fork, or as large retailers or multinational technology companies, or do we need new forms of cooperation governance model? So you can take your time to think about a poll question and answer later. And then I'd like to ask Mirjam to start our discussion today. Mirjam.
Thank you. I will try to share my screen. I would like to give a short introduction of myself and then give a short introduction of GS1. I don't know if everybody knows GS1, but I just would like to give a quick introduction. Yes, I think everybody can see my screen. Well, it was nice to hear that you started with connecting, because that's our payoff. It's connected by GS1, because we would like to be a platform to connect organizations throughout the supply chain. And I will come back to that later. But first, a quick introduction of myself. Yeah. I have been working in supply chains for more than 30 years. First, it was in mostly physical supply chains, and I saw them change towards more digital supply chains. When you look in what's happening around us regarding traceability, regarding data security, sustainability, it all has to do with supply chains, with the physical supply chains, but also with digital supply chains. Because when we want to improve our physical supply chains, we're going to need more and more data in order to improve our supply chains. And when I'm talking about improving supply chains, it's not only improving the physical structure or lowering cost or becoming more efficient, but it's also product safety, the possibility to inform our consumers better, the possibility to have really more sustainable supply chains. So by improving supply chains, I'm working on more efficient, but also more sustainable supply chains. Well, I've been doing that in different roles, being a manager, employee, I've also been a CEO, and I've done this in retailer, wholesale, and logistical service provider surroundings. And almost 1 year ago, I started at GS1. And the nice thing is that for me, there came two things together, because I've been working in digital supply chains for a long period and tried to create efficient and transparent supply chains. And that's also the mission of GS1. GS1 wants to create efficient and transparent product chains. So finally, maybe that's very detailed, but for every product, you would like to see the whole product journey, starting from a seed and ending maybe even after the selling of the product. And GS1 wants to help those companies in this chain to be able to share the data in order to create that transparency. So my personal drive and the drive of GS1, they fit quite well, and that's the reason why I started 1 year ago at GS1. Well, GS1 started more than 50 years ago, and it started with in the United States, and one of our large retailers in the Netherlands, Albert Heijn, brought the barcode and the product number to the Netherlands. And maybe adding on the poll you just filled in, at the moment that Albert Heijn brought the barcode and the GTIN to the Netherlands, he made a very important choice. He could have chosen to say, well, I'm only implementing the barcode at my own retailer, ask the suppliers also to use that barcode and the GTIN and leave it there. But his vision was, we have international supply chains, we have suppliers who are delivering more retailers. So by capturing the full use of a barcode, I mustn't implement it not only for my own retailer, but we must implement it over all retailers, over all suppliers throughout the world. And that was his vision. And he started GS1 in the Netherlands, and after GS1 in the Netherlands in a lot of different countries. So that was the first moment that it was there was a body created, GS1, and it was created by its members in order to enable companies to share data. Already it was said, our purpose is to identify products and locations, then capture the data belonging to those products or locations. And the third thing is we want to share this information between partners. So that's the most, so we capture and then we also would like to share the data. And when you look at the history of maybe of GS1, when we started, we were mostly operating from the producer till the retailer. And the last few years, we went more upstream. So we really started at the seed or at the stable or at the tree, but we also just end when the product is being refurbished or by the end of its life. And when you look at the whole supply chain and you see what's happening now. We started with the product, the G10, but we have to enlarge it. So it's not only products, it's the life cycle of the product, but also location that we need. So we need unique identification, we need registries, and we also need connected data throughout the whole chain. So not only part of the chain, but throughout the whole chain in order to say something about sustainability. Well, said we started with the G10, so those are product codes, and it's very important to say those are unique. What we capture is master data, so it's not transactional data, it's master data, and we also build registries because you really want to know that's unique, and therefore we can also offer verified by. Compliance is very important, and of course data quality, because we can register a lot of data, but it's only of value when it's having the right quality. And besides G10s, we also have location codes, and I think that's one of the subjects also for today, because the G10 is quite accepted, and the GLN location codes, it's less accepted. And when you want to say something about, again, sustainability, you also need to have the location codes. And I think that's one of the discussions, how can we create one unique system for locations? Maybe one last thing is, by this year, we created a separate sector, agriculture, because there are so many use cases when you look into sustainability that it's worthwhile to separate the sector for us. So we really made it a separate sector, and maybe some of you know Fresh Upstream. By the end, it was going to be GS1 agriculture to really support this sector, and not only in the Netherlands, but within Europe and within the world, because that's the only way in which we can really create a transparent supply chain. So this is what we're working on, and I would like to have the discussion how we can really support this.
Thanks, Myung. It's a great presentation, and also that touched upon a lot of issues we addressed in previous sessions, development of standardized data streams, location. In our early sessions, we had, for example, presentation with discussion with TrueCode, and also Dataport. I see Hans de Heer from Dataport is also here. So we have a full house today. I'm really looking forward to have our participant to actively give your questions and discussions today. So Bianca, let's see what the poll results are. Divergent answers. What do you think about this, the result of the poll question, Myung? What is your take on this question?
Yeah, well, maybe as I stated before, I think it's when the business is able to set the standards, that of course is always very great to do. But sometimes I think you need some help because there can be different stakeholders involved, or maybe it costs some money, which can be a barrier. So when we have barriers which we need to achieve, then it's maybe good to have to help to get some help from governments. But by the end, I think it needs to be a separate body who sets the standards, a body who is sitting very close or working together with the members or the organizations who are active in the field.
So you agree with the majority of our audience today, more than 50% think there need to be a new form, new governance model. Yeah. There's no existing player who can take that lead.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm doubting that because we have an organization with 115 GS1 organizations around the world. And I think we have proven that for the product identity, it's possible to have that independent organization, not making profit and having the information shared throughout the whole world. And it's almost used in all the different countries. So I think there is a body who can also serve and help this one, which is independent. So I think GS1 could be one of them, and we don't need to have a separate body.
Okay, thanks. Let's hear from Christian. What do you think about this question? So before you start, we have our second poll question. When you are preparing your sheets, Bianca, please. So second question is relating to the first one is, what do you think will be the most likely landscape for interconnecting separate data platforms? So what will be the business model in the future? So you can, again, take your time to address this question while Christian gives his presentation. Christian, it's yours, floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I still have to put away my poll. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here again and staying to this wonderful series of discussions and dialogue, and how well this was orchestrated shows now that during the course of the year, we were just looking at like 20th of January, some first type of presentations, that in this course of the almost finishing year, we are now circling back and have the major contributors basically in this call. So I would assume, without doing further, if we just take everyone in this call today on the diversity and the movers and shakers in this call or this session here, we could sit together and actually find a solution that would be mainstreaming, and no one would actually question our legitimacy of doing it. We can still redistribute who does what in the end in the operations, but it is the difference between doing and the difference between decision-making, the governance issue, which we want to bring forward. So let me just put in the, whoops, where is the, here we go, okay. So what I wanted to start with is really put us all to the same page, and everyone has a few different visions, but at least we know that food and farming is very closely related, and most of the food starts today still on farming. Yes, we have some more fabrication. We can have also new laboratory meat, etc. But a lot of the raw materials should come from the plant production. And say a world in which farms are recognized for their efforts to continuously produce enough safe food while safeguarding our environment and the welfare of farming communities. So we have the environmental, we have the social component in it, us as a society. And if you then think about how we approach it, a very brief introduction of Global Gap, and we'll run through this because most people I know in the call know about us. We have come up as looking for a holistic approach to farming, and this was on the content largely, food safety, environment, holistic approach, workers and animal welfare, but also in the whole a group of production that is basically under control. We wouldn't do like wild catch, so we need people that will look like MSC and others that look into the wild catch, the wild collection, and maybe also forestry is important in this whole sector. What we missed out in this slide is the evolution to our new version 6, which basically now, oops, forward is the difficulty here. Okay, is that we are missing out, you see and recognize the same, for responsible farming practices. There is two bullet points that wasn't in that round slide, is the management, the processes, the legality, the legal requirements and traceability. These are elements that we also have, of course, in our standards, but they are largely also overlapping with other organizations, not just the content. So looking at a membership, just to get, we said the retailers shouldn't be in the driving seat, but I would also say without having the big buyers being represented somewhere in governance, we're not creating that level of additional demand. So let me just, so these are those ones I wanted to share, but where it comes complicated, and I just refer to Miriam's slides of all the different aspects to look at. We also look at all the different commodity groups. There are so many different interests. This is what we just do. It is only a fraction of it. We look at the global scale. We have people from around the world here to solve this, but we also look at different stages in production. So there are the developing world where we would call it primary farm assurance systems would help, or just traceability, smallholders that just look for one single thing to look at. Maybe they just want to earn money with climate smart farming, and then they can fund any additional activities. Whereas we also see a high-ranking area of the sort of animal welfare pieces in Europe, or we also may look at specifics that are just for a few retailers or a few markets. So it's a big range of it. You can do that with modules like we do. We have a different plug and plays, but that's only one approach. I don't want to always claim that we have done everything right. But these are all areas when we would, as Global GAP, and we consider not ourselves to be the center of the universe, but when we want to participate in any type of governance structure, we would like to see that this is being captured, like everyone else that comes to the table. So, and then I'm talking about governance. It's members. It's a very complicated slide, but I don't want to go through those. But I'm just saying the model that works for 20 years for us, the model that works for GS1 for that many years, is that we are member-driven organizations. We run a private business entity, but the governance structure is member-driven decision-making, democracy, and this is all the different parties that work with different committees. So for me, the question is governance and ownership. Our members, our retailers, our producers, and I think the same with GS1, they feel it's our system. They feel ownership of the solution, and that should be always a measurable area of it. And then it comes to the difficult piece of data. So far it was certificates. But now it comes to sometimes business critical data that needs to be shared, automatically scalable. And here the unique IDs are important, which already was mentioned. I mean, this is what we will do, but this is again only, I share this only because not of saying this is the only way to do it, but we will develop and have developed already certain streams of data because our farmers and others trust Global GAP to hold that data, like residue data, testing data, which is very business critical. And then we need to find a way how to share that further. I have to mention this because I was sometimes saying this 2015, this declaration of Abu Dhabi, that was within 1 year, we were able to push a lot of diverse organizations and members, GS1 also being a part of this, is how to find solutions for these problems. And these are, Miriam, you said it, the second one, a system for uniquely identifying every farm, every location, the GLN. Global GAP uses, our GGN is a GLN, but then also we have the TrueCode. I know Mayan is here in the call. So that's another approach to it. So we have different, then you have others. We started one day with a pure, we call it field passport, which was a unique area ID purely on geolocation. Then you have the 3-word location opportunities. So there are so many areas. We just need to find ways how we translate those and have it unique. And of course, the common practices, that's our everyday work, make sure that there's no duplication of content. And where we have been struggling, and I think the technology now is ready, is a mechanism for securing this commitment and reporting by supply chain partners. This is going through the system. And Hans, here you have done a smart solution to connect that in this type of interoperability. So we have the people in the room that have different solutions, which may not be the only one, but is at least something where we think where the connectivity comes. So that in the end, that in the end, this video still, which people can still watch, is what I think is necessary to have this round table. I would not call it nobody. I would call it governed by everybody, just to be the counterpart, and we'll discuss this today. It's distributed data with APIs, with technology, but a set of rules that allows to have even one-to-one supply chain interactivity. It doesn't need to go, the data doesn't flow over this central desk. It's only to set the rules for the framework. And as people were in the call saying, is there already an organization that should do it? No, but I think the two major, if your first poll, a new organizational frame, a decentralized system of governance. However, the drivers to make this happen are exactly those organizations that host the data today, that have already the same governance structure, that have this democratization of data and of sharing data. So this is my sort of starting point in the discussion. So it's not of nobody, because that will be something from Mars, but I would say rather of everybody in a democratic process and in a transparent way. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Very interesting. We introduced the term of everybody, which is at the side of the coin of nobody. Can mean the same thing or just different things. So it is a very complex topic, as we already see from the discussion, because for last decades or so, this sustainability has been more driven by voluntary consumer demands and the developed world. But now we are talking about governments like EU are setting up sustainability requirements, reducing organic farming, biodiversity directives, carbon offsetting. So this topic of agriculture development, it's critical, have a desire to be driven by many actors. But same time, indeed, you have big players in individual fields are not really understanding yet how this handshake should happen between the different players. So let's see what the audience think about our future business model on the poll question. Bianca? Okay, here we have more, less divergent, but more interesting on food sector driven subscription model, more also trusting more the food sector themselves. Interesting. What do you think about this question, Christian? Following
I didn't vote here, so it may screw a little bit because I was already preparing and talking. Now, can you pull it up again? I just I think it's not on my screen anymore. Here, yeah. No, I think the subscription model, I think, is exactly the lines we would be looking in. And food sector driven is also, because food sector driven is the opposite from public sector government driven. Yeah, the government will follow, but we are in the driver's seat. We are the innovators, the food sector itself. It's also not driven by a third-party company from Silicon Valley or Shenzhen, right? So we think it's us. They can provide technology, but it's us to govern this. It's the model is real. The people are in the food sector themselves. They are driven by meeting the needs of the future, of feeding the world, and so forth. So we would do it ourselves. We should not be divided and ruled by anyone that comes and has the billions of dollars of investment money just to do a new startup that will say, I transform the food industry. And those people are there. Yeah, so I think it's our call, and it's our call to actually work together.
Thank you. So today it's a kind of first step in the direction of discussing how this roundtable might complement the different players on the table. So in fact, with the participant, we already have a kind of roundtable information, let's say. We have also Mirjam from TrueCode, and as I mentioned, Hans de here from Dataport. There's a question audience from Simone indeed asking a question. I think it's for me, also for our team. We have different development technologies, standards. What are their relationship? How do you complement, supplement, compete? What are the gaps? So maybe we can start with the question from Simone to Christian. What is the relationship between Global Gap, for example, with TrueCode? And that's actually a question also relating to Mirjam's presentation. You mentioned the development toward the location code, which is what TrueCode is actually developing to do for smallholder farmers. So it's a very interesting question is, how does this different technology relate to each other? So I leave open the floor also to other audience to join in.
Can I give an answer, Christian? Do you want to start?
Please, Marjan,
Yeah,
yes, I've been speaking so much already.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when you look into the location identifiers, of course, there are a lot of different identifiers already. So doing as if there's nothing and just start again, that's not the world we are living in. So there are a lot of identifiers, which is okay. But at the end, we are working in a global system where a lot of farmers are delivering to a lot of producers, and a lot of producers are delivering to a lot of retailers. So we are really in a very interconnected world. And when we develop standards for only a small part of the supply chain, or so that can be done by software suppliers, but also by other organizations, that doesn't matter. Then it's difficult to have really interoperability between those different chains. And by the end, you would like to have really interoperability between all the chains, because it's going from Brazil to the Netherlands and from the Netherlands to China. And when you are a farmer or a producer, what you would like to have is only one standard. So, or we need to connect the different standards which are already there, but then we need to connect them to each other, which can be another agreement which we can make together. So we don't need to reinvent all those standards, but we can really connect it, because by the end, I think we all want to build trust for the customer. And when you buy something, the only thing you would really want to know is, when I'm buying something, I would like to know where it's really coming from, what has been the journey, and that the information you receive must be right. It must be high quality information. So we must achieve together to have the high quality information. And therefore, we need to have the right location code, for example. So we don't need to find out a new location code for all the different locations, but we need to connect them. And I think that's where we have to align and find each other around this table and have really one set of agreements, one language, and that has nothing to do with the technology, just one language, how we can align and connect and communicate with each other.
Christian?
Yeah, I don't think I need to add much. It is now 2015 to now, a 6-year-old idea. We're working on this. We made some good progress on the first elements. And also there is important contributions coming in. In the end, it is just the willingness and how to really work together. For me, once you are above 50, beyond 50, you don't think about anymore how to resolve it, but you have to ask who to resolve it. So you just have to know, a trusted person, they will get it done, right? So it's the people that need now to really have a commitment to get together. We shouldn't continue discussing how to do it. Everyone has their own ideas, so forth, right? I mean, it could be a central, like two or three phone companies. They all benefit. They all want to maximize their sales of the phones and the contracts, but they still benefit that you can call any other phone with a roaming agreement, right? And how do they do it? I mean, I don't care how they do it, right? They found the engineers to just do it, but they needed to get together on a commercial business saying, okay, it's better for us to get a roaming system in place together so that we can call and everyone only has one phone and not three phones.
Thanks. So indeed, we also in previous sessions today, the word trust has been mentioned many, many times, especially in this farming, smallholder farmers, community issues. There's a lot of context also involved. Different organizations have also a playing field, let's say. So it's lesser important to talk about who will take over who. In that sense, you have all niche or areas. It's important indeed to discuss, okay, each have the data, have standards, how do you can communicate with each other? Because in the end, the user case is the government. In order for EU, for example, to achieve the sustainability goals, you need to have a data dashboard that can integrate different kind of data streams and then have a uniform or standardized reporting. So you can go to the bank and go to EU, can go to the retailers with information you need. So we have a question also from Petra. Petra, you can switch on your microphone and camera so you can explain your questions. That's actually a similar question I just asked.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm involved in the due diligence processes that are being initiated by the Commission right now. I'm a researcher, by the way, I'm an agricultural economist, and I'm linked to Wageningen Economic Research in Wageningen. And I know there are a number of due diligence processes on the way. And of course, a lot of projects are being, are upcoming to get more information about product streams entering into the European Union. And I was just wondering if and how TrueCode and Global Gap are connected or could be useful instruments for these due diligence processes. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. Also, Mirjam from TrueCode is also in the audience. So I'd like to ask both Christian, Mirjam, and Mirjam, sorry, to respond to Petra's question. You would like to?
Mirjam,
Christian first.
Start?
Marjan, right? Marjan,
yeah, sorry.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, good. Now, maybe just to put some context in why we started the journey with TrueCode, because we've been working in international supply chains for at least personally, but also with the company for many years, working with international retailers and producers that do more than only food and farming. So let me start with that, right? So we have textile and we have cosmetics but of course a big part is food and also fresh food. And of course, you shouldn't introduce something which is working if there was already a good way for scaling up the identification of locations, we would never start the TrueCode, never, really, because it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of cost to bring it on. But we've just found, that if you look at the farming over the world, there is just 22% that is certified against different standards. So you have Global Gap, but you also have Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance, and God knows how many standards there are with different scopes. And the thing that when it comes to fresh, the majority of the problems or the issues, the challenges are in the first mile of the supply chain. So with this, with the farmers and the most critical commodities that also have been identified with the EU contain the work of smallholder farmers. And we are very active in the topic of living wage and living income. And the journey of TrueCode started two years ago with the Consumer Goods Forum, because we found out, the people don't even have enough money to pay their family. Let's stand to buy a number. So you have to find clever ways to at least, try to find a way to get the right information from these smallholder farmers and help them with something for free. And that's where the journey of the TrueCode started. And Petra wrote it in the chat, that combination of what the TrueCode is now testing in soy, in coffee, in cocoa, it works. It actually works, but it is more than only a location passport. It is making use of the newest technology of the decentralized ledger, connecting existing databases that contain the information that companies like retailers and producers are looking for, and use the number only as a free identification. But the passport is much more than a GLN. It also contains about the number of women, of men, of the type of income, because in the end we see that if companies have the right intention to make a difference in the lives of the farmers, to work on living income, they need a starting point. And building a passport that gives the ones that want to do good the chance to see where the farmers stand is part of the TrueCode concept. And I see, like Petra, a very good possibility. And Christian and I are talking from the beginning about this. And I believe in a governance structure where also the TrueCode, we started it with the idea that it should be handed over to the whole community with a governance structure that makes sense. So step by step, we tried, by the way, to work with GS1 many times with the head office, with Holland. We got bashed out. So Miriam, maybe we have a chance to get started in a new way. Because we see the opportunity to work with GS1 to bring this further and see how GS1 and initiatives like ours could work together. Because I don't believe that there will be one standard setting or there will be one database. It's just not going to happen. So if that is the reality, why not try to find ways to connect data sources that are already there? Global Gap is a beautiful example, and let those who need it the most benefit. So don't make it a business model that goes over the back of people that don't even have enough to feed their families. I'm strongly against that. The number is just a way, and it is possible to have it for free, to connect the farmer to those who more and more are sincere to help them. So I hope this is some input for the discussion.
Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Marjan, for again, the very well explained. I think there may be still a couple of areas where it differs a bit. First of all, I think the structure, the technologies are coming from a need and all have a very good story to drive them forward. But I think that is exactly where the difficulty comes, because to really, and I know you so long, and so I do truly believe you, but there is always, whenever a technology provider comes, and in this case, you're a technology provider of the TrueCode. No, you may argue that, then people will think there is a private interest in all of this. So when GS1 started, there was a common set of problems, and then they started the technology afterwards to build this, and as well as what we would do. So I would first of all not argue, is there a TrueCode and global GAP combination? We could take any code into our system. We can take and let it run in the background. But we've used from the very beginning, also for the smallest farmers, we actually used the GS1, the GLN. We basically we bypassed the system of costing a bit. So but there's your German colleagues. So we are basically, it's a couple of cents, a few cents, which is even sponsored by the industry, which every farmer gives that unique GLN, sub-GLN number, which we can uniquely identify them in the system. So if there is another need for additional numbering systems, and I think the TrueCode also, how it's been developed with Rüdiger and so forth, has a lot of merit. I like it a lot, the way how it can be applied, but it cannot fully replace initially this governance structure is already existing. So our solution to have and work with a global GS1 taxonomy, but then building on top other areas. I mean, in farming, there are other organizations that are driving and are part of it and have the first mile to the farmers and work with them. For example, we have on the call here Solidaridad, you might want to call in as well. Yeah, so they are having a lot of same intentions to work on that level.
So already Marjan made already a petition, say, of why should TrueCode work together with GS1, and Christian mentioned the important word of taxonomy, that proposing of Global GAP adopting the GS1 taxonomy, but then extend it to other functionality. So indeed, we have a lot of great audience today to developing all different directions. I have Han Brouwers from Solidaridad working on fair data, and also Hans de Heer from Dataports. I would like to ask first Hans de Heer to give a comment, your take on the round table, and then like to ask Han Brouwers also to maybe give some ideas on what Solidaridad is doing on fair data, following both Hans. So Hans, please.
Yeah, so much to respond to. Together with Marjan, also active in the consumer goods forum, we looked at another initiative, peer-to-peer data exchange. What Christian was mentioning, I think it's sort of multiple layers, and we try to solve them all at once. One is the discussion is identification. Now, TrueCode says, I'm certain that one location has one code, if that's the ID. GLNs are used for everything. We use it to identify computer systems. We use it to identify locations, companies. I have 22 GLMs myself, and nobody knows where in the world I am. So there is no value to a GLN except that it identifies something, but it's not unique. So if you say it should uniquely identify a physical entity, location, it's not that's complex. Same with GTIN, doesn't identify one product, sometimes identifies over 100 products with the same GTIN. Some retailers do this. And so that's again fit for purpose. So where do we want to use it? If we want to have trusted data, then of course you have the huge complexity. Is this really about the entity I'm talking to? Is it the company? Is it location? Is it the product? It should be unique. And then the data below that, and that's what I agree with Christian. There are initiatives centralizing the data. All these companies want to have power, whether they're commercially or GS1. But GS1 also wants to be the product database of the world. And then it becomes complex, because if something doesn't fit, you cannot exchange it, and it's too slow to serve all industries. So the value is in between. But we also learned the hard way, that's the opposite, and maybe also a Christian story. If there is nobody in the middle, nothing happens. So everybody says, we want to get rid of the middle. We want to have easy peer-to-peer, all these things which makes our lives easier. Transparency and all that kind of stuff. And if there's nothing in between, whether it's GS1, Global GAP, or any other institute that nobody wants, nothing happens. So the sad story is we need something in the middle, because 25 million independent individuals or 100,000 companies in the whole industry won't do the trick. And that's sort of the complex puzzle we need to solve. And then last one, I agree, no standard will ever become the standard. If you look at product identification, Amazon thinks that the ASIN is way better than any identifier we've ever invented, because at least it's unique. And of course, GS1 says, no, it's the GTIN because we already have it and everybody's using it. And then Amazon says, but in no time, there will be no retailers left but us, so who cares? So it's a very different game to play, but I think you should split it in layers. So what do we want to do? We want to have exchange data across the value chain. That's also in the EU. We want to have decent products that don't demolish the world and are healthy for people. Okay, how can we prove that is actually the case? And then comes in the complexity. So we need interoperability and we need open standards, and it has to be fit for purpose. So if it identifies something, it must be unique. And that last one is maybe very, very complex. Even the list of countries we cannot agree on. China and the rest of the world have differences on that, but also Morocco has sort of a claim on a part of the world which we consider so the ISO list of countries we cannot even agree on, so let alone on all the other maybe standards. But that's more my so I'll only make it go more complex. And but I think we should try to kill it one by one and always take the principle no standard will ever become the standard. Sorry for everybody in the room who thinks that they will. I think it's impossible.
Can I add, Tiffany?
Yes, please.
Because I hear a lot of things about GS1. I fully agree that there are a lot of standards, and now creating one is going to be very, very difficult. And I also heard from Marianne, who was telling I was kicked out by GS1. I think a couple of years ago, the Consumer Goods Forum asked by the Singapore resolution from GS1 to have a unique GTINs, but also unique location codes. So at least in the last half year, there is a full data model developed, which also responds to what Hans is saying, that there is a difference between a tree, which is, or a stable, which is needs to have a GLN as well as a legal entity. So how to handle all those different layers, but also build a registry. And it doesn't have to be one database, because I don't believe in one database, but it needs to be somewhere connected, because at least you want to know when you buy soya, you want to know where it's coming from. So we need to agree on how can we at least communicate with each other. So on one hand, I think there's happened a lot, and of course we need to do a lot of things. But developing one standard in Europe regarding location codes. It must be possible to achieve this together and to work together on this and find each other. So I definitely will contact my own and have the discussion. But I think so saying, well, GS1 isn't doing anything. Well, that's not quite right. So I think we need to build this register, or at least common language for our consumers. And it's not going to be easy. But I think by the willingness of the large companies who sometimes started out also the GTIN, together with the people who are already active in this sector, I think it's possible to make a step. And besides that, Amazon fully recognizes the GTIN and uses the GTIN. So I'm happy for that.
They are using it, but they don't consider it a unique identifier of a product. That's the difference. Because it's not. And of course, if everybody follows the rules, it should be. But the fact is that it's not. And they need a unique identifier. And also sometimes we need a unique identifier. And and it's not simple, because you want to have convenience. We are struggling with this all the time. Convenience in your commercial process. Never change the identifier. I just want to reorder the same thing. But then in the same shampoo bottle, we've got rid of the microplastics. And I want to communicate on that. Then I need two numbers, because the previous bottle is not the same as the new one. The retailer says, please don't change the number, because then we have shelf playing. You pay fees. And so So that's why I say the GTIN is not at the moment, and I think will never be, a unique identifier of any product which is produced. And that means a certain variant that runs out of your production line. If you change anything in the bill of materials, I need to have a unique number because packaging materials can change, origins can change, certificates can change, I can go on and on and on. And the GTIN says no, then it's still the same number at this moment, the way it's implemented. It's an industry problem, it's not a GS1 problem. It's the way that the industry says convenience over uniqueness. Now, and then we say, okay, then we still need a commercial number and maybe other identifier. And then comes in the issue that some say, we have a second identifier that actually is below the GTIN, which is fine, which says, okay, now I can distinguish one bottle from the other bottle. In my commercial process, it's just the same product. Everybody picks it on the same place, fine, same price even. And that's where the complexity comes in. So I say, yeah, and that's why you see that different use cases have different needs. And in some needs, one identifier is perfect, but in another context, it's not. And sometimes we try to stick, no, we have this one and it should work. But if it has to work for two purposes, like the GLN, is it a location? Is it an entity? Is it a computer system number? Then it becomes complex.
Yes, it is, but I think therefore it's very important to sit together and to have these discussions, because then we can make mutual agreements on how to solve this, because this will go on and on. We will have new plastics, we have new ingredients. So we need to sit together and decide on how we can implement and use the GTIN, because I know for sure when we sit together and we have all the use cases, it's not going to be simple, but then we can make decisions on how to use it based on the industry which is using these numbers, and we can make the agreements together with the organization. So it's not from the government but it's made by the organizations who are using it every day. And I think the agreements must be made because you know how it's working and how you will use it. So sitting together with the people who are using GTINs and GLNs every day, I think that's the most important part. And then when we come to mutual language.
Thanks. It's a great discussion because we actually are having this virtual roundtable, bringing different stakeholders. And Hans just gave from more technical and practical, in a way, point of view of what are the obstacles. As I mentioned, Han Brouwers from Solidaridad, which is also our earlier speaker. We didn't talk about fair data development then. So I wonder if, Hans, you can give a quick word about where do you fit in this standard setting, fairness, social movement, but of course you focus on the developing world, especially also.
Yeah, thanks. Hi all, my name is Han Brouwers. I'm working for Solidaridad and among others taking care of what we, for the time being, call our Fair Data program. Now, just to sketch the context a bit and where we are coming from, our 5-year strategy is named Reclaiming Sustainability, and this strategy will be conducted up to the end of 2025. Now, what do we mean with reclaiming sustainability? Solidaridad is the founder of Max Havelaar. We were at the basis of fair trade. And what we have noticed over the last 35 years since the introduction of Max Havelaar is that, sustainability is, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way, but sustainability is hijacked by us here in this, in this meeting. Technology providers, supply chain actors, standard bodies, etc., etc. While we say we need to bring back sustainability as a business case to the farmer, meaning that in the end, the farmer should benefit from all the sustainability efforts we are trying to achieve, basically as custodians of biodiversity, landscape, etc., in the areas where we work. Combined with the fact that our interventions are becoming increasingly data-driven and that the demand for data coming from supply chain actors, but also governments, legislation-driven, due diligence-driven, etc., we said, okay, the moment has come to consider our position as an NGO on a global level. Now, what we want to do is to influence and steer the, let's say, conversation about data and data-driven agriculture from smallholder farmers. What we said, among others, is that for instance, data collection as such for all supply chain actors, financial institutions for financial inclusiveness propositions, carbon offsetting. There is a lot of requirement for data. However, data collection as such is a very costly element. So what we would like to avoid is a situation where all types of organizations jump into the field, hooking farmers into data inquiries, etc., and locking them in a kind of system. That's one element. So principle one for what we call fair data or the fair trade in data is that we say, okay, in the end, farmers must always remain in control over their own data, and we should provide them with a governance structure where they, are safeguarded in that element. Secondly, as data can also represent value, the value generated out of the data must be also beneficial for the farmer. And that could be on, in our, let's say, scope per today, that could be on 3 levels. First of all, access to technology, access to digital interactions, etc. So in the end, digital literacy. Secondly, added value services generated by data analysis, and in the end, AI. And thirdly, that can also be value, either money, tokens, reward schemes, etc. Now, taking rewarding as one of the core drivers, we have done quite some research once it comes to why do farmers adopt certain practices, why not? What are drivers for a farmer to contribute in the end to his or her business case? And to summarize and to jump to conclusion, this is all to do by influencing behavioral change, because in the end, you can, pay a farmer for not cutting a tree, but what we would like to achieve is how could, a long-term process contribute to the overall business case of the farmer by adopting other practices. So in the end, we are investigating and further researching rewarding schemes combined with behavior, because that is, in our opinion, where it's all about, coming from a farmer's perspective. Now, jumping to let's say the topics in this conversation, we see our role as first of all as an enabler on the ground, but we would also like to add the fair trade in data principles to the overall conversation. So in that context, we are, among others, engaging with Global Gap, with Christian, to discuss let's say the context. And we're also aiming for, first of all, things need to be tested as well, because you can say, okay, we want to generate value for the farmer. Now, the next question is how, who will pay for it, etc. But that is part of the more pragmatic approach. When it comes to data sharing in general, the core question for us, from let's say from NGO Solidaridad's perspective, but also reflecting the farmer's voice, is how can we, apply the basic 2 principles to all these data sharing initiatives, and how can we, participate in the conversation to put the farmer's perspective, let's say, on a structural basis on the agenda. That is basically the context. I'm not sure if that's, let's say, an answer to your question, Tiffany, or to other questions, but this is basically where we are coming from, and that is the starting principle for the Fair Data program as it is per today.
Great. I think this is a very short but very good overview of the development of fair data, but you introduced a very important topic, also addressed by earlier speakers, about user case and basically the value model. Also, to give a pre-announcement, starting next February on this digital food platform, we'll focus on user cases. So start organizing discussion on concrete challenges and gaps, and the user case to how the different chain players can work together. But with the introduction of Han, I would be interested to see if Christian, Mirjam, that you have some comment. I said the development of fair data, how does it relate to your organizations, for example?
I give a first reaction. Well, anyway, the data, for us, the data doesn't belong to us. So the data will anyway stay, so the one who enters the data is responsible and owner of the data. So a lot of companies are saying, well, data is the new gold. For us, it isn't. We want to help the organizations to share the data, and that's really the purpose. We need to help also the small farmers and large organizations to start sharing the data, and the data stays where at the owner. But I recognize what was said, that it's not a one-way data sharing. So it's not adding data by the farmer and then giving it to the next chain. When the data, and I know, for example, there are some large manufacturers of equipment which are being used by the farmers, who also have the data and are owner of the data and don't give it back to the farmer, for example. So talking about fair data, fair data, I think it's very important not to have those lock-ins, but really have the data be owned by the ones who are giving the data or are using it and giving it back and doing the analysis. So I fully support the idea of fair data. And I also support it because there are so many smaller companies for whom it's very difficult to start with the data gathering, that we should also help them. There are a lot of large organizations, and we also have the principle of the broader shoulders. They bear the heavy load, because otherwise it's a big hurdle for the small companies. But I fully agree on fair trade and fair data. Yeah.
Christian, any
Yeah,
comments?
I think this is basically always said, and Hans said that we are in discussion, so for sure. I believe, coming from putting the farmer into the center, that there need to be the right incentives. Being myself a farmer's son, you know what it means that you do things and what is it worth doing things. So there need to be that integration of farmers, and that can only be done when you share value across this. So I think what I would like to do here, and Tiffany, I did behind your back created a new poll here to ask the flavor of the people joining here. Bianca, if you can pull this out, would you be willing to come to a table and join an initiative to create a new association to address these data sharing rules? Just from the fly, would you be willing to do this here? And this could be just a test a bit of, yes, there are so many diverse people, but we need to work and collaborate together. So I'd like to see how much sort of interest is there already, how far are we in that discussion? So fair data is only one element, but an important one.
Indeed, we have several leading important organizations on the audience already today. Wageningen, Solidaridad, Consumer Goods Forum. So we have a roundtable in the formation, let's say. So
if everybody puts their vote in, then...
you want to show it already, Bianca, the answer? An overwhelming majority to join.
Yeah, of course, not decided yet, because for some of them new coming in, but the yes, and of course we don't know who said yes and who doesn't, but it's a good mailing list to actually promote the interest here. So I see the appetite is right, the timing is right, the willingness is right to do so. And as long as we step back, each of ourselves, we will, and that is, everyone in this has their own objectives, and we all want to grow our own organization, our own areas of, and we've often discussed also, Dick with you and Tiffany, what's your role here? And you said you don't want to create that organization. No, but you'd like to facilitate and promote and be a platform, and like what we do today, right? And that will also be a role in the future. I don't want everyone needs to use a global gap certificate. It would be wonderful. Yes, it would be a nice statute somewhere, sometime. But no, it's just to initiate the things, and whoever wants to use the GS1 should be able to use that as an interface. Yeah, so that is also the Declaration of Abu Dhabi. Last sentence here. It was designed that you have an interface, your language, in which you want to communicate and see the world. Like we have our two eyes, most of us, to do it. And what's behind is different, is magic to make it the way that you can see it the way you want it and improve it. That's the convenience piece. But I don't need to know what's happening inside an iPhone. I can customize it and I still use certain standards and have the beauty and benefit of it. The only thing is that that you need to have some shares in the iPhone and governance, which we don't. That's the only difficulty. So that's what we need to change in a social enterprise.
Yeah, so actually, great question, Christian, because actually in our first poll question, you already see that a similar percentage, more than 50% people do think that needs to be a new form of, if it's an organization, it's a governance, not association, but it needs to be somebody to bring these parties together, because actually what Hans already said, when there's maybe everybody, there's also nobody. So it needs to be something. So I have some time for a few more wrapping comments. So I have Dick, and also have Marjan, and other audience, if you have a burning question, you can raise your hand. I have Roland also. So let's go with that sequence. Marjan, you already want to give a comment.
No, I think it's wonderful that you take this initiative, and Tiffany will compliment again for leading this. You know, this is a new era we are stepping in, and like Hans said, you know, the people in the first mile of the supply chain need to, wherever it's possible, need help to become the owner of their data, because in the end they need to benefit. And if we would already have all the answers, things would be solved. It is, you know, Global Gap is just when you look at the millions of farmers, Global Gap is just a very small, you know, player, a very important one in Europe. But if you look on a global scale, and especially on the commodities like coffee and coca, you know, so when you look at these challenges, you always have to take some distance and look at it from a global perspective. Conversations like this help, and input like given by Miriam, Christian, and Han are pieces of the puzzle. Like the TrueCode is just an initiative. We let it go tomorrow if the problem is solved, because that is the driver behind it. So pieces of the puzzle. If we all keep trying, we will find a way to make interconnectivity possible, but also make democratization of data possible. You, as an owner of a passport with all the private information, shall decide what to share with who, so that you can also benefit from an extra premium or from extra support or whatever is at stake. And I'm a strong believer in that. So I thank Han Brouwer also for his bringing it in. Pieces of the puzzle were at the beginning of an interesting journey. So thanks for this initiative again and allowing me to listen in. Thanks.
Thanks, Marjan, because indeed, this is our about 15th or so of the discussion. For me, following this whole journey, I do also feel today that some of the puzzle pieces are starting to come together, because we start to look at like an elephant, start feeling it different ways, try to feel how it looks like. We still don't have a full picture, but today we start to feel like the different big players are starting to come together and see how are they fitting with each other. Roland had a question, actually comment. Maybe you wanted it, Roland? You want to give a quick introduction of what do you mean by Arc Gateway in your comment? Roland, for that, you can switch on your, please. You can switch, you are unmuted, you have to unmute yourself. No.
Yes, hello. Well, first of all, I agree that with Hans that the use case is very important, and I believe also that because there are so many different use cases, that we will never be able to get to one system. And Christian told it as well, and I'm working, by the way, for Homologa, and you know Homologa, Christian. And we also see Homolog is a database that contains crop protection information about registered pesticides worldwide. And we see, for instance, that crop grouping is a very impossible item, for instance, because crop grouping is defined by the governments, and it's different. One is following pure the biological crop grouping, and for instance, they say, okay, it's grasses, so maize is part of grasses. Where other countries say, well, maize is such a big crop in our country, we use it as a separate crop. So when you have a use of pesticides in cereals or in grasses, is it including or excluding maize? Well, that's country specific. So you never will get one coding worldwide. You always have to map it. So I think we can forget about that. So the round table you suggest, Christian, is a good solution where you can find solutions how to connect the different systems to each other. And keep in mind that in the end of the day, you are comparing apples and pears, and you cannot forget about that. Then I mentioned Egg Gateway. Egg Gateway is an organization trying to find common ground, let's put it that way, to connect information on a worldwide level. It's basically the big manufacturers of tractors and also pesticides are members of that organization. And even within Egg Gateway, there's a big fight to see and how to can we find a way to connect the US system with, for instance. And I think it's an endless discussion because there will never be an answer to get one system. So, to my opinion, the only thing is to find as much as possible common denominators and find cross tables to stick the different systems to each other. And therefore, you need the round table to find the right clicks from one system to the other.
Thanks, Roland, for introducing this other player. It's also new to me then. I think we need to, indeed, in the future sessions, to go deeper into these different really user cases and start with Europe, let's say, and that can integrate with US, China, the future.
Europe is already a big challenge.
Yes. We have actually more comments coming in. I don't know if we can, with a little bit over time, but then we have Nico commenting the development on indoor farming. And Urian has a question about the pesticide database. Maybe Roland can respond to Urian on the chat or connect. I think we need to wrap our session today. I'd like to ask Dick Veerman. Dick, would you like to also give a word about what we're gonna do in the next session in February, just following this discussion in the kind of forming of this roundtable development movement, I say.
Okay, so thank you very much. And thank you very much, Christian, Mirjam, Marjan, Hans, Han. We brought to the table the whole discussion, and I think we made a circle, and now we started building this nobody, everybody's body. We can't even say what it is, but it is neutral. And I think we are on our way to neutrality in the open. And that, I thank you for that, because that is what we need. I think it has just started. So that is one thing. So we'll start use cases, indeed, because that is what we need to talk about. That is, everything that we're talking about will come out of that and will serve use cases, because that is necessary. necessary. It is an endless process. So create this open, endless process in order to serve use cases. But before we go into that, Hans de Gier will be back with something we fear, and we fear, Hans and I fear, and all of us should fear, is the goodness paradox. We fear that with data, a slow growing broiler, for example, will turn out not to be sustainable, but it is ethical. And in Dutch, we call it sustainable, but it isn't, because a fast-growing broiler, for example, is more sustainable than a slow-growing one. So how to solve that problem in the eyes of the consumer, because the consumer will get confused. So that is one more use case probably we'll put on the table, and then to be practical. And I hope we've opened this indeed completely neutral country, this neutral table of everyone or nobody. And thank you all for being here.
So with that, we wrap up today's session. It's really, really great discussion today. I think it's to be able to connect spontaneously different organizations and sharing developments, and really actually compared to a year ago, Christian, a lot has happened. I think also in this platform, the topics has gone a lot deeper, and then we are starting to be able to see where are the concrete areas of this big, hairy discussion topic that can be practically acted on by the players. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, for commenting, for listening and staying. Hope to see you in a month when we talk about the last session of the 4th edition, but then also continue in 2022. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.